It is the last session of the day. I do think it's quite fitting that it is the last session of the day. Um, we prepared the STM Trends, of course, a couple of weeks ago. Everything was finished a couple of weeks ago. But you will recognize, I think, many of the themes that we have also discussed today and yesterday. So I think it's a very nice way to maybe bring a few of those topics, connect them, and maybe bring them under a common umbrella. So my name is Hilke Koers. I'm the CIO of STM Solutions. And I'm delighted to present to you today the latest editions, the STM Trends 2027, with the motto, level up, master the new complexities, and go for the top. So if you're familiar with the STM Trends exercise, you may remember we've been doing this for about 12 years, and these trends really express our future vision, not in a lengthy report, but in one image or an infographic that says it all. It's meant to be a discussion starter more than a report, so I do very much hope you find it useful as a discussion starter. And this year's edition is particularly interactive, so I hope you have the opportunity to explore that and play around with it. If you're new to the trends, I hope you will enjoy this type of visualization. It really tries to capture what we think will be the most impactful development in scholarly comms over the next 3 to 5 years to come. So let me not hold you in suspense any longer. This is it. This year's edition of the STM Trends is a board game. And I know some of you will have already seen it in the lunch room, etc. It's loosely based on a game that I think will be familiar to many of you. Snakes and Ladders, or in the US, I think it's called Chutes and Ladders. Can I see a quick show of hands? Who has played Snakes and Ladders or Chutes and Ladders? That's what I thought. Excellent, so very familiar. However, of course, we would not be the STM Future Lab and Stack if we did not build in a few extra complexities and challenges that really reflect the core of the discussions that we had. I'll explain to you later what those are and why we included them into the game. What's both important to realize and also fun is that you can actually play it. You can play it with colleagues or at home and really experience the complexities that we expect will come to the area of scholarly communications over the next couple of years. Sometimes those will bring new opportunities, represented by the ladders, but other times there will be new risks, represented by the snakes in the game, and I will elaborate on some of those in more detail. The game is really intended to help you master those and be well prepared to make the journey and reach the top, and hence the motto for this year, level up. Before going into the details of the infographic itself, a few words about the process. And STM Trends is really collaboration at work. What you see here is some 25 STM members assembling together each year in London typically and start brainstorming together about that future. This year we held a session in December. I think for people who were there you will agree with me. It was kind of special doing it again in person after 2 years of COVID. A really new level of energy in the room. We were delighted we could meet in the stable space in London again, generously made available by Springer Nature. Springer Nature, thank you again for that. And then we typically use the Delphi method, which is a well-known technique for technology forecasting. The idea is fairly straightforward. We bring together experts in certain areas. Each of them carries, of course, their own thoughts, their own ideas, their own perspectives, their own viewpoints. Then we have several rounds of discussions and we start to converge towards common themes. Now, the composition of the group is, of course, important for the outcome. For the STM Trends, we always invite members from the STM Stack, the Science and Technology Executive Committee, and Future Lab. Typically, these are senior staff working from STM member organizations in areas like innovation, technology, strategy, business development, and IT. That does mean the Trends editions typically have a technical view or a technical lens, but the scope is really much broader than that and really extends to all of scholarly communications. So the result is a room full of views, as you can see on this slide, with notes and a word cloud. AI was, of course, a heavily identified trend for the next few years, with AI getting very real. Not a new topic, but the novelty here is it's starting to happen, it's starting to become real, and we need to act on it. And mind you, this was early December. ChatGPT 3 has just been released. That already feels like a long time ago. So I have a feeling this is a trend that's definitely going to be there to stay. AI influenced our discussions to quite some extent. We talked about good AI versus bad ideas, the opportunities, the challenges, the ladders and the snakes. but also how that flows into trust, digital identity. We spoke about paper mills and the fear of being too slow. We spoke about sustainability, ethics, infrastructure, platforms. And we spoke a lot about collaborations and about developing new and utilizing shared solutions. Then the final step was an editing committee comprised of Heather Steens, who is in the audience today and will be moderating the panel in a bit, Eefke Smit and myself. And we synthesized all of this into this new special edition of the board game Snakes and Ladders. And let me explain in a bit more detail why we chose that particular board game as the format. It really carries a long history. The game originally comes from India, more than 2,000 years old, and here's a few really nice antique editions that we found in old archives. It's a children's game originally, really to teach kids about good and bad sides of life. And really intrinsic is the duality that we face in everything. We find ladders that help us climb up, we trip over snakes that make us slide down. It's all about good and bad, destiny and desire, virtue and vice, good karma and bad karma. And the good deeds help us go up, while the bad acts make us slip down. In the 19th century, it became a children's game, quite popular around the world. If you're not familiar, it is fairly simple. You throw a dice, you make one of your pawns move forward, and the aim is to reach the final square at the top, the Valhalla. If you land at the bottom of a ladder, you climb up. If you gain progress, if you land on the head of a snake, you slide down and you have to go back. Now in the STM version of the game, of course, we built in a few extras because the game is really just the format. So moving on into the content and what we wanted to bring across to reflect the conversations that we had in that meeting in December. Each player will travel through 6 key areas that all have their own hurdles and their own rewards. And these 6 areas represent the key 6 trends that we see as highly impactful for scholarly comms in the next 3 to 5 years to come. I'll take you quickly through each of them. And again, reflecting on the discussions that we had today and the discussions that we had yesterday, I don't think I even need to sort of call out the analogies and the synergies, right? It's all there. So AI, of course, very central in our discussion. How do we distinguish what a human did from what what a machine did? And in what sense exactly does it really matter if something came from a human or an AI? How do we apply AI? How do we benefit from it? What's the opportunities? Can we make scholarly communications go better, faster, more trustworthy, more equitable? Closely connected, the area of digital identity. In the wake of generative AI, we see that it's becoming increasingly important to check provenance of people, of institutions, and of the work that was carried out. At the same time, user privacy remains very important, and we must make sure that researchers are able to do their work in anonymity if they wish, and that provisions for digital identity will not lead to exclusion effects. Social responsibility brings us quite naturally to that area. Science brings progress, makes the world a better place. So how can we organize scholarly comms in support of that objective? Publishers widely recognize a need to do so and a clear opportunity to be more transparent about how they are doing that, for example, with SDGs. Transparency then takes the snake of my storyline to open research, closely related to both transparency as well as trust. And in addition, it's about being reproducible, being replicable, creating linkages between different types of research outputs, sharing, linking, citing of research data, for example, to make the connection to the previous session, and also driving for more equitable research assessment. So how do we do that, and how do we enrich but not erode the version of record? Collaboration. To make all of this work, we have to collaborate. Scholarly comms is a field with many stakeholders in order to build infrastructure and solutions that allow us to make use of the opportunities while avoiding the pitfalls. It's simply, we have to work together, even though that can sometimes slow us down, or there's a risk that that slows us down. Finally, at the top of the pyramid and the place where we all want to be, research integrity. As important as ever. I think if there was one theme for the last couple of days, at least for me, it might have been research integrity. We see that science is under attack by paper mills, by bad actors, publishers rising to the challenge to continue to be the custodians of trusted research. So these 6 areas are the essence of our trends forecast for this year's edition. We feel it's important that we recognize them and we need to master them. And what better way to master something than to play a game? So back to the board game. The first thing that you'll notice is the game has snakes and ladders on all of these 6 key areas. And again, while moving your pawns forward, you encounter snakes, which slide you down, and ladders that you can climb up. We also included some squares where you can gain points for good acts or simply good karma, or where you lose points because of bad acts or just bad luck. And note how these 6 areas are coloring the playing field. Very centrally, AI placed in orange in celebration of King's Day in the Netherlands today, playing a very central role for the next few years. Very close to it and directly related, digital identity in turquoise. In purple, you see the area of social responsibility right at the start of the game, and that's not a coincidence because for many of us, that is the starting point for a lot of what we do and what keeps us going in the morning and why we're eager to get to work. In red, shouldering the top, open research, just like collaboration in pink. And then the ultimate goal is in the apex of the game, in green, research integrity, that enlightened state that we all wish to reach. So let's take a quick tour around these various areas to see what events, what mishaps, what opportunities you might encounter there if you play the game. And again, AI very central in the board. Dangerous snakes here about paper mill attacks, fabricated data, ChatGPT, but also a ladder for faster peer review thanks to AI. Other bonus points for speeding up research, for example in medicine by generating research hypotheses, being transparent about your AI ethics principles, and penalties await for fuzzy authorship, image manipulation, paper mills that infiltrate your journals. Directly related to space of digital identity, and some of the dangers here include big tech surveillance, loss of data, privacy, a huge snake for papers with authors that don't actually exist, and on the other hand, plus points for clear provenance of data, articles, methods, connecting articles to ORCID, integrating with seamless access or GetFTR, and implementing privacy-preserving and user-friendly solutions such as portable digital identity. Social responsibility, placed at the starting point for scholarly communications, as a great deal of research and therefore scholarly publishing ultimately derives from a desire to make the world a better place. The actions there range from promoting SDGs to fostering more diversity, equity, inclusion, and support for scientists in war zones. There's bonus points to be gained for climate change research, more DEI, Research for Life, the SDG Compact Fellows Initiative, mentoring programs, and penalty points for having too few women on editorial boards, underrepresentation of the Global South, and a snake for the lack of sufficient credits for early career researchers in peer review. An important shoulder in the game is open research, and this is really about reproducibility of research, being more transparent early on in the research cycle. Pluses for making available research data in a fair way, sharing site research data and other outputs, sharing lab notebooks, sharing data management plans. Minus points for unclear methods sections, articles that truly explode in the sense that they become completely unmanageable for peer reviewers and editors. The other shoulder in the game is dedicated to the importance of collaboration, critical to manage all of these complexities and being able to seize the opportunities while avoiding the risks. Bonus points for distributed usage logging, article sharing framework, and of course, a super long ladder if you join the STM Integrity Hub. There was a little prerogative we couldn't help inserting there. Minus points for geopolitical fragmentation, failing to make use of shared intelligence and tools, and for example, being unable to combat cybercrime. And you will also recognize the icons of many other organizations that are very good at cross-industry collaborations, for example, Crossref, Chorus, ORCID, DataCite, and a few others are mentioned on the board. So advancing to the top of the game, the finish, the nirvana as it was called in the Indian version. This key area is all about research integrity and advancing trusted research. We find snakes for paper mills and predatory journals, minus points for duplicate submissions and citation rings, and for the fact that science is under attack. We have a ladder for being transparent about retractions, bonus points for joining COPE on publishing ethics and for applying transparent peer review, and all of these essential elements eventually lead to reach the top of advancing trusted research. If you have followed the STM trends during the last couple of years, you might think, I've seen some of this before, or actually I may have seen all of these themes in some shape or form before. And that's right, on this slide we have collected several of the earlier STM trends, And indeed, all of these 6 themes have been discussed in earlier stages. But there's a difference, and the important difference here is in many of these previous discussions and these previous versions, we were sort of musing almost in an academical sense about what might happen. And today, all of this is happening, and it's happening at the same time, and that adds a lot of complexity and a lot of unpredictability that we want to exemplify again by choosing this game as the format. For example, AI has become practical. We heard a lot about it the last couple of days. Research integrity has become a top item on many agendas, and we see an important role there to play for publishers. So once more, back to the game board. You see the 6 areas spread out with AI very centrally positioned in the middle, close to digital identity, social responsibility, where it all starts, and then the 2 shoulders, open research, collaboration, leading to the top, research integrity, and ultimately to advancing trusted research. This is not just an illustration. As I mentioned in the beginning, you can actually play the game. The board is downloadable from the STM website, and we have a few prints available here that you can grab on the way out at the end of the session. You'll find the rules of the game on the poster. It's pretty self-explanatory, but 3 things I think are worth calling out, in particular because they sort of exemplify the story that we want to tell coming out of these brainstorms. First, it is a game where everyone can win. Some can win a little bit more quickly than others, some can gain more points than others, but everyone can reach that state at the top. Second, the game is of course meant to be a discussion starter, to spur discussion, and so we invite players to take a moment and discuss between themselves whenever they land on one of the 6 zones. The third point about the gameplay is that scholarly comms has many stakeholders, as we all know, from the author to the reader, from the librarian to the publisher, from the engineer to the doctor, and so on and so forth. And these are all actors in our space that have a role to play in developing joint solutions. And to signify that, we have created little pawn stickers for all of them. And when you play the game, we are inviting all of them to the playing board. As a player, you can choose several of these actors to work with, to work together. And you will find that if you work together, if you have multiple pawns, multiple actors, you will have more strategic control, and you will be less prone to the influence of chance and fate as you go through. I'm reaching the end of my presentation before I hand over to Heather for the panel discussion that we wanted to follow this up with. But let me just summarize the poster of this year's edition of the STM Trends, the Trends 2027. So the motto is level up, master new complexities, go for the top. We very much encourage all of you to explore your own journey in that space with its ups and downs along the opportunities and the challenges of AI, digital identity, social responsibility, open research, collaboration, research integrity. I'd like to thank IEEE as a long-time and generous sponsor of the STM Trends. And finally, before I really hand over, 2 things I wanted to make everybody aware of. You can book an in-house presentation and of course enter the playing field yourself. All of it again downloadable from the website, and you can grab a copy there. Choose the pawns that you like to get to know a little bit better, start to collaborate and level up. Thank you.